I'm Marg Walker. I'm host this evening for the Midstream Reading Series, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's see, what to say. We have 4 wonderful readers tonight, each reading about 15 minutes, and when we're finished with the reading, we invite you to stick around and get to know one another, chat with the readers. A few of them have brought books if you wanted to peruse them or even buy them. That's something available to do. So we thank you for that. For those who haven't been here before or haven't needed to know this before, the bathrooms are down this long hall. So you just go out, take a right, another right, and halfway down the hall you'll find them. It usually gets really hot in here if we close the door. So I'm going to leave it open for now. But please, those of you who are on the edge, if it feels like it's noisy, close it over so that we don't have trouble hearing our readers. I'm going to send around a sign-up sheet in a minute here for those of you who are not on our mailing list right now. We only send out notices twice a month for the upcoming reading. We don't use it in any other way, so you won't get hammered with a lot of stuff in your inbox. So please do sign in if you'd like. And what else do I need to tell you? I think that's probably it. Thank you, Paul Mattis, for recording us tonight. This reading will be posted on our website pretty soon, whenever he gets to it. All right. It's customary in the Midstream Reading Series, which has been going on, what is it, well over a dozen years, I can't remember how long. It's customary to have the host read a poem before the evening gets properly underway. And tonight, rather than read one of my own, I want to read one of our colleague Don Brunquell. Many of you know that Don was a host among 4 co-hosts here that have sponsored the Midstream Reading Series for the last few years. And those of you who know him probably know he had a cancer diagnosis about 16 months ago, and also perhaps know that he died in late December. And I miss him. He was a lovely, lovely man. And it's a great loss to this community, I think, and also to our community of St. Paul. So I'm going to read one of Don's poems. During his illness, he realized that it was time to pull together the poems that he had written over at least a couple of decades, dedicated to his various family members. And he published this book called A World Together, that are his family poems, just last year. I chose this poem, which he wrote for his wife, Sally, because it's about stories that we tell one another, and it just strikes me that that's what poetry also is about. We are the same stories. The stories are of your life, and also of mine, curling warm and tender in the hearth of memory. What makes you, you, me, and us, I suppose. Hearing again tonight the story of the dog in the canoe leaping into clear water, seeking ground. I notice you have merged it with a second story from another year. At least in my life, they were 2 events, and I choose to be silent, for really, what difference adheres to these elisions, conflations, emendations, fabulations we call memory? Though we live here and now, we float on the stories we shared, or believed we shared, imagined we shared, chose to share just as tonight we choose to stand together, silent to our separate truths, in one story we each call our own. For Don. And now for our first reader, Matt Mauch. Matt is the author of 5 books, including a hybrid memoir, A Northern Spring. His poetry collections are We're the Flown Over, We Come from Flyoverland, Bird Brain, If You're Lucky is a Theory of Mine, Prayer Book, as well as the chapbook, The Brilliance of the Sparrow. He founded the Great Twin Cities Poetry Read and the journal Poetry City, and has organized and hosted many other poetry readings and events. A recipient of a Minnesota State Arts Board grant, Mauch's work has been recognized as a finalist for National Poetry Series and other national and international contests, and has appeared in numerous journals, including Conduit, The Journal, Diagram, Willow Springs, the Los Angeles Review, Forklift, Ohio, Sonora Review, Waterstone Review, and on the Poetry Daily and Verse Daily websites. This guy gets around. Matt lives in Minneapolis and teaches in the AFA Creative Writing Program at Normandale Community College. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Marg. Thank you, Sharon, for recommending me to read tonight. Appreciate that. I'm glad to be reading again at the Midstream reading series, which I've read at in now both cities. I crossed the river tonight to get over there. I'm going to read from A Northern Spring. This is my new book. It's actually still fresh into the world. It just came out in July of this year, so it seems brand new yet. Has anybody seen, here's what A Northern Spring looks like. The cover designer did a fantastic job with this. Has anybody seen Dairy Girls, the television series? Okay. This opens in Derry in the north of Ireland. It's like Marg said, it's a combination of prose and poetry, and the prose sections are all packaged as text messages to an unnamed P from an unnamed MM. When I was in Northern Ireland, I did not have a phone plan, so I didn't know if I was sending text messages and not hearing back, not sure if they were being received, whatever. So the nature of these text messages are based on that reality. So Wednesday, 10:35 p.m., 11 March 2020, Derry, Northern Ireland. I'm not sure if you are receiving my text, nor I all of yours. I am up later than the rest like a good old kitchen light. Gale force, for the record, is too hackneyed to do justice to the pounding that Derry is receiving from the big indifferent. The braggadocio we Minnesotans have regarding our changeable weather has been rendered impotent here by the temperamental ravaging of all this near-the-sea-ness. Praise be to this old brick building in which we have rented enough rooms to stretch our legs, etc. in. It is unmoved and unswaying, a secret member of the wind's sect, perhaps, or dare I venture that the lintel of the entrance is marked. Wednesday, 11:05 p.m. I just read in The Guardian that dear leader has announced a travel ban for everybody in Europe. Bless these reporters trying to clarify what he means. They are like an underground ready to rebuild once the armistice comes. They are saying to a source that the ban goes into effect at midnight tomorrow, all carriages then transformed into pumpkins. The others are awake in their bedrooms. I hear them on their phones trying to make sense of the announcement, I'm sure. My feeling is not anxiety, but something halfway between the dull clock watching one does when proctoring a final exam and the suppression of expectations one engages in upon hearing you're a finalist, but that the judge needs more time to make a final decision. I sit here trying to do my best imitation of this lovely brick. Thursday, 8:31 a.m. More and more, the troubles seems to be perfect as a lens through which to see better our own violences, fractures, and feuds. The spades of domestic terrorism we seldom call out as such, and more I have the sense that the expansiveness of our geography, our own sea to shining sea-ness, is what keeps us from descending into open and perpetual conflict with neighbor and kin, as well as from facing what we need to face if any of our mottos and creeds are to be anything other than curriculum. This trip has been as fruitful as a tree from which you can't give away all the edibles before they rot. I have listened and learned much. Those to whom I've listened are always sad to tell me what they have to say. It is why the commingling of coffee and whiskey for breakfast is so easy to embrace as its own sustenance, why using real cream indeed matters. So I was in the north of Ireland, Northern Ireland, when Trump announced the travel ban in March 2020, and the pandemic was announced as a pandemic. So we didn't know if we were going to get back. from Northern Ireland. We weren't sure if we wanted to get back after we thought about that. There were no cases at all yet in Northern Ireland. There were cases in the U.S., and it made sense to stay if we could stay and charge stuff on our credit cards, but we eventually did make it back. But the prose is divided into 4 sections, which covers those 4 days from the announcement to when we finally left. And so in between those sections are poems, regular lineated poems, that are pandemic-based poems. So you have the 4 days separated by the poems in between, and then I'll talk about the ending when we get to the ending. So I open each section with quotations, epigraphs from pandemics past. And so I did a lot of reading. I have a Giovanni Boccaccio one I'm going to read from Claire Rass on the Spanish flu, 1918. This is what Clara had to say. Chicago looks as though it has got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peeling. Everything is closed on account of that epidemic. Dances, theaters, and all other places of amusements. Evening schools are closed, no smoking whatever on car. If you cough continuously at work, your employers are compelled to send you home. I tell you, it's awful. Numbers of people die every day. I'm going to digress a little bit here. I just started rereading, for fun, Moby Dick. And in the beginning of Moby Dick, there's an announcement. When was Moby Dick written?
1851, something like that.
1850, okay? There's an announcement. Ishmael sees a posted bill, and it says on this posted bill, controversial presidential election coming up, bloody battle in Afghanistan, and I'm like, absolutely nothing has changed. As if I had been visited by bees. The veteran garbage man trains in with aplomb a new hire. Rendered in pencil, it could be called necessary work. It could be called study in the acquisition of grace. One demonstrates, another tries to replicate, as if learning the steps of a dance. I'm moved like I'm moved by the occasional and well-conceived dramatic episode in a serial comedy. Before I was moved, I was repeating a phrase. My new mission is reconciling. My new mission is reconciling. Now that I've been moved, I'm trying to flower. I engage with a lot of other texts. One of the texts that I engage with is the haiku poet Isa, the haiku master. And so I just mentioned Isa. If you don't know Isa, you may know some of Isa haikus. I will read a couple before I read the poem where I talk about Isa. Even with insects, some can sing, some can't. All the time I pray to the Buddha, I keep on killing mosquitoes. Napped half the day, no one punished me. And here's his most famous one. Don't worry, spiders, I keep house casually. So this is where I'm in conversation with Isa. When in the nursing home, via Skype, Zoom, and FaceTime, the residents speak like Isa. You will think that spring has landed on your head. It is impossible to take a selfie of what you're feeling. You will be thinking that you need a painter to paint what you feel. They will say to you, spring is like new hair. Wear it fancy while you can. You try to catch what they're saying like the cotton that the child is trying to catch in the globe two hands make. What they say when they speak like Isa falls like a snow that didn't receive the itinerary of spring. They say the cotton is tethered to the wood. Whomever catches a seed catches a tree. They say you are the gardens and the yard of the home the people purchased in winter. You are under new snow like a bear. You are what they do not know they are waiting for. If you must arrive, they will tell you, arrive is too much. The goddamned itinerary, the last thing they say, pretend you didn't receive it. I'll read one more poem, and then I'll read with some of the prose from the closing section. This is called The Friable Quality. Friable means like easily crumbled, like if you pick up soil between your fingers, there's a chunk of soil and it easily crumbles into smaller bits. So the friable quality. I smile as I verify that my driver's license shows that I checked the organ donor box. Thinking of my eye in your socket, looking back on a past that imagined us inside each other more wholly. I almost die from the joy, seeing like elders whose advice to the young eye seized by standing atop a pyramid the elders didn't know until they were too old to climb back down that they had never been paid to build. Our futures are futures of walking multitudinously, part butcher, part cobbler, part Hindu, seeing the same cow. We make more and more sandwiches for all the unexpected visitors, drawn they know not why or how to our kitchen of nearly fatal joy with bread we were saving for another use. If you like flags, wave us. Sing to honor the many just now dead, the dying. The air that has ensnared us in its web is wrinkled and corrugated and wavy in the wake of Romeo, Romeoing it, Juliet juggling us like her offspring in the inflatable bounce house of her mouth. What a blast, writing words time released to self-destruct in a kiss, breaths breathed out like prescriptions to heal, as if the tongues were picks, the tongued guitars, such that we almost miss that we have maybe 60 seconds left before the future is what was meant to be. So this book ends with a prose section. It's a coda. There's a last prose section called The Last Week of May in Minneapolis, 2020, which was the week when George Floyd was murdered and we had the protest, etc., the people coming in from out of town. And so that's when I knew this was a book, when that happened. And I had started writing the stuff at the beginning as soon as I got back, and that's when I'm like, oh, I have this, there's this spring and these two events with the travel ban and being in Europe and the pandemic and then George Floyd, and so it seems like a sort of slice of life. So this is from that coda, A House in South Minneapolis, the last week of May 2020. A dumpster is burning in the center of an intersection a block south of Lake Street, like it's a distributary channel. Lake Street being reports indicate the primary thoroughfare of flame. It's the kind of dumpster a landlord sets behind an apartment building to collect the weekly trash for all the renters whose initials and last names fit in the small rectangles above the rows of mailboxes up front. Mailbox setups that have always reminded me of mausoleums. I watch from a 3-season porch with all the windows, double hungs open wide. On the various screens where I watch it, television, laptop, phone, the dumpster fire scene looks like a party. There's a general sense of joy. It is not unlike the sort of misbehavior and property damage that revelers would think long overdue on the streets here if the Vikings ever won a Super Bowl. The revelers remain a block south of Lake and are thinking not campfire, but bonfire. A filling in the blanks part of my mind is trying to see the people still inside the apartments, trying to see those in bedrooms, in basements, in single-family houses, in duplexes from which the receptacles have been repurposed. Is it better to keep all the lights on or turn them off? Is this like a tornado such that one is safest in the lower interior room with thick walls and no windows? I imagine the children, the adults trying to calm them, the older children joining the effort already changed. I think of the fear that perhaps only the refugees among us have antecedent for, the inheritors of transgenerational trauma trying to understand a vaguely tingling sense of deja vu. What was a block south of Lake Street is moving further south. Everything I have read regarding the desire of the white power movement to foment strife and eventually civil war, to come together when the time is right, feels like it is happening here, like Minneapolis has become a gathering place. The street that the traveling bonfire that seems less and less like a party is coming down is mine. Thanks for that. Thanks for coming tonight. We have a wonderful lineup.
Thank you, Matt. Our next reader is Bill Reichard. He is a writer, visual artist, and educator. His 8th book of poetry, In the Evening, will be published by Broadstone Books in 2024. Do you have a release date yet? Do you know?
The fall.
In the fall of 2024, so look for that, In the Evening. And Bill lives in St. Paul. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks for asking me to read. Thanks for coming, everybody. Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Lift it up a little bit.
How's that?
Better.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to read just a selection of poems. Some of them are from the new book. It'll be out in the fall. It's called In the Evening. And then some work from my last book, which came out in 2021 during the pandemic. So it's sort of like an orphan book because nobody noticed. But that happened to a lot of us. So. Okay, this one's called The Night Loves the Night. The night loves the night, and so it compounds, building upon itself, carrying the dark structures and the dark streets on its back like a dowager's hump. Nightfall by 4 in the afternoon, snow pellets strike the windows, a constant snare drum, endless staccato. Tomorrow, everything will be painted in ice. The night loves the night, and so it grows in the frozen soil, roots too shallow to hold, yet taller every hour, a vine of fine fingers stretching over the side of the house. If you don't see this, that which moves toward you with incredible speed, it will overtake you and bring on a blankness remarkable and deep. The night loves the night, like marries like, and in that love grows beyond all reckoning. A salted road, a dirty car, wind rattling a chain-link fence, and all along the freeway, stars blooming from street lamps, drawing their bright arc across the winter sky, falling the way stars do, silently, splendidly. My previous book, the one that came out in 2021, is called Our Delicate Barricades Down, and it was a book of prose poetry, so I'll just do a couple of pieces from that. Probably the closest I'll ever get to writing a memoir, I think, with that book. And it's called A Question of the Body. The soil there was primarily clay, sticky, slick, harvesting carrots, radishes, beets, washing the clean dirt away with icy well water. And the water full of iron, so strong a single glass left the taste of metal in my mouth. Yet it didn't steel me against that hard life. The air there was filled with conflicting scents, fresh mown alfalfa against the stench of the stockyard next door, peony and piss, lilac and tractor exhaust. My blood was iron. My blood was smoke from the endless stream of cigarettes my family consumed. Cut me and a wisp of burnt tobacco drifted from the wound. My bones were trees, oak, silver maple, ash, box elder. My hair, the weightless fluff from the cottonwood seeds. My body, the flat land, the subtle hills that rolled from acre to acre. Frigid river water, the unseen undercurrent, the brackish pools near the shore. My nerves spreading out in endless tributaries. What held me together? Gravel roads and hot tar, snowdrifts and icicles, sheer will, dreams, confusion. I think we'll maybe skip that one. In the new book, again, it's called In the Evening. I have a series of poems called American Saints, and they're about a variety of queer people who've been murdered over time. This is Matthew Shepard, which I think we all know. Cold wind moves like a flat hand over the land of that part of Wyoming, coming down from the mountains with a sharp, mindless brutality. Maybe it offered relief to the man, beaten bloody, crucified on a weathered fence post, a cowboy Christ. Maybe it numbed his swollen eyes, split lips, each bone broken, each laceration. Night cocooned him in a cradle of dark. Outside Laramie, he saw the stars, the endless stars, and they carried him away. This one is from this happened in 1973 in New Orleans, and it's titled The Reverend Bill Larson, and this takes place at a gay bar called the Upstairs Lounge, New Orleans, June 1973. A charred head protruding from a barred window, beyond pleading, beyond pain. Hours passed before police entered the smoldering remains of the second-story bar, removed the remains for autopsy and identification. How many hundreds of people passed by that scene in those hours between death and recovery? How New Orleans, city of refuge for the strange, the displaced, the exotic, the deranged, for all those so essentially different, did you allow this to happen? Where is the line between hatred and humanity? He stood at the window screaming for his life, for the lives of his friends, and the police below did nothing. They watched his murder by fire the way disinterested parties watch the scene of an accident, curious but removed, convinced that the circumstance has nothing to do with them. He died screaming, his mouth frozen open in painful protest, in shocked, pleading disbelief. The bar's on the second floor. Somebody barricaded the door and then set the place on fire. And literally no one came to help. This is from the new book. It's called What Love Is. After Seth tore the body of Osiris into pieces and scattered them across the earth, Isis traveled around the globe and collected each portion of her husband. At the bottom of the sea, a hand. On the tallest mountain peak, a leg. Deep in the bowels of a volcano, his head. She carefully stitched him together, and when his body was again complete, she breathed life back into him. How far would I go to save you? To collect each broken piece and lovingly reassemble something resembling my husband? And how far would you go to save me, to pull me out of the wreckage of myself? Isis loved Osiris, and so set for the rest of us an impossible task. Breathe life back into me, my love, and I will give you all of my breath, every drop of blood in my body. I can do that one. All right, this is called the Dancing Plague, which maybe you've heard of it. It took place in Strasbourg in Germany in 1518. Dancing generally wasn't allowed, so the Dancing Plague. Perhaps she heard a phantom fiddle or a lute, something she could set her rhythm to, a joyous metronome keeping time as she took her first tentative steps. This was nothing she had learned. Dancing was forbidden in her drab world, in a lifetime framed by the rising and setting sun, the endless chores between dawn and dusk. Dancing was an extravagance, and nothing was wasted in her household, not even the energy it took to spin rhythmically just once around a room. The woman's body began to sway as she swept. She saw dust motes dancing in the morning air, and motion took hold. She couldn't stop it. A warm breeze blew through the open door, and she saw outside the trees dancing, and the butterflies and the starlings as they swept across the sky in impossibly complex patterns. The blacksmith unknowingly pounded out a beat, and her feet moved to it. As she danced her way out the door, neighbors stopped working and watched. The woman across the street, beating the dust from a rug, began to pound the rug in time to the anvil's rhythm. And the woman next door began to sway as she hung on her bed linens. Two children, carried away by the rhythm, began to clap and sway, and as the woman danced, they followed. Who could say when each villager in turn was caught up in the rhythm's web and followed the crowd as it danced by their doors? The priest later said it was Satan at work, distracting good souls from God's earnest labors. And the baker said, before joining the throng and spun in a white cloud of flour, that maybe it was God instead who pulled the people along to the tune of birdsong, cattle calls, the river rushing through the mill, God inviting his people to dance in celebration of their lives, in the glory of the ordinary. Let's see here. I think I will maybe read some of this. Deborah, you've heard this story, so I'm sorry for that. Part of there's a section of poems in the new book called After Trackle, and it's Georg Trackle, the German poet. I undertook a translation of Trackle, having had, 2 years of high school German and 2 years of college German, and pretty much immediately abandoned trying to do a good translation. So instead, I translated the words I actually recognized, and then I responded to other words intuitively. I just sort of wrote on what they reminded me of, and found out it was a great way to sort of get myself back to the image. The previous book had been very autobiographical, and I wanted to find a way to root myself back in the visual. So here are a few. For a child, the blackbird calls. This is your oblivion. Your lips let go the cool of blue. The future's told in the correct interpretation of bird flight. You pass silently into the night and so move more beautifully in that blue. You are a hyacinth. You are a small bird that passes overhead. You are the last light of the morning star by which we navigate. Let's see. This is called The Last of the Sun. The forest is a dark beast that's broken by the light. On the green pond, a fisherman drifts in a blue skiff. He catches nothing. The day inclines towards silence, good and evil done. They're all quite short, so this is called In Sleep. Birds, night moths, spiders, and bats sleep in the dusky trees. Your shadow, lost like a bird, flaps against the night's unbroken seams. It tries to fly out of the darkness, but you keep your eyes tight shut, so there's no path for it to follow. This is Night Soul. A murmur in the pine hollow. The moon gleams silver into devastated rooms. When he opens his slow hands, the forest paths burn with a blue light. It obliterates the darkness. Let's see. All right. The last one from here it's called To Sleep. I sought his lost shadow in the sunset, while white birds pushed against the last seam of light. His was an invisible affliction. Damn his dark poisons. I'll read the title poem from the new book in the evening. The night air is filled with the scent of apples, and the moon is nearly full. In the next room, Jim is reading. A small cat sleeps in the crook of his arm. The night singers are loud, proclaiming themselves every evening until they run out of nights and die in the cold, or burrow down into the mud to dream away the winter. My office is awash in books and photographs, and the sepia-pink sunset stains all its light touches. I've never been a good traveler, but there are days like this one when I'd pay anything to be in another country, or standing on the cold gray moon, staring back at the disaster we call our world. We crave change but turn away from it. We drown in contradictions. Tonight, I'll sleep blanketed in moonlight. In my dreams, I'll have nothing to say about anything important. I'll simply live my life and let the night singers live theirs until all of us are gone. I won't say a word and let silence speak in my stead. That's a good place to stop.
I have to say, I haven't known either of these two poets before, and I just need a moment. It's been amazing reading so far, and we're in for more. We're a really big crowd, as you, I'm sure, have noticed. So I'm going to right now send around this sign-in sheet. Again, this is just for an email if you'd like to be on the Midstream Reading Series email list. And also want to take this moment to thank Unity Church for offering this space to us for free. And because they do, and we're grateful, we also send around a little offering basket. You know, it's a church. So if you have a couple of bucks and you want to throw them in, that'd be great. And we would appreciate it. That helps defray their costs. Yes?
I don't believe anyone announced it, but Don Brunkel, are you going to say something?
Oh, I did at the very outset, right at 7:30, that Don Brunquell, some of you have come in after that though.
Yeah, he passed away.
Passed away in late December. He was one of the 4 co-hosts of the current Midstream reading series, and so, yeah, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Marg?
Yes.
Do you maybe also want to just mention the date of his service?
Oh, certainly. Yes, thank you, Karen. Don's service, Don Brunquell's service, will be here at Unity Church on February 2nd at 2 p.m. That's a Friday, and it's 222, right? February 2 at 2 p.m. So for those of you who knew him and would like to come, that would be lovely. We're next going to hear from Liz Weir, who grew up in England, worked as a nurse in London and Cape Town, South Africa. With her husband and 2 boys, she came to Minnesota in 1978. Her book, High on Table Mountain, was nominated for the 2017 Midwest Poetry Book Award, and Kelsey Books published her 2nd book, When Our World Was Whole. Her poetry has been published in many journals, most recently in Comstock Review, Evening Street Review, Adana, and, is that how you say that? Adana? I don't know. And Boomerlit and North Meridian Review. Welcome, Liz.
I like to move around, so move it up so I don't knock it over. This is my 2nd book, and I'm very honoured to read in such company. My first poem, early in Nonsuch Park, and I grew up near a very large open space, and it had been King Henry VIII's hunting ground. And he used to say, "There's none such a place I'd rather be," and none such became Nonsuch. I grew up on Nonsuch Walk. Early in Nonsuch Park, we watch her leave, and my dad looks around. No park keepers. Now, he says, "Be quick." He lifts me into the scented whiteness of a May tree in full flower until I can see over the lip of a mud-woven nest. I'm lowered, and we back through twigs and beeham into the open and away. 4 blue eggs, I whisper, and a bare squirmy thing. Well done, a hatchling. We wait on a log to be certain the thrush returns, and see her flit into the whiteness, worm in beak. Good, she's back, come along, and he takes my hand, me stretching to match his stride, he with spring in his step. He was pleased with his lesson to me. Leaping ahead, this takes place at Wayzata Library, and it's our first grandchild. A great pleasure. At Wayzata Library, I pull a long velvety sock onto my arm. It has stork eyes and a Sesame Street gape and a coil of soft fabric. "Hello, little Satya," it says. Our grandson's eyes grow soft. "Am I a rabbit?" it asks, eager to know. "Nope," and Satya shakes his head. "Then I must be a mouse." "No, no, no," he squirms. I hitch up the flop of fabric at my elbow. "Perhaps I am a goat?" "Nope." His eyes shine. The library, bookshelves, other toddlers cease to exist in his engaged present. "I don't know who I am," my arm laments. The sock twists its mouth in glumness, droops his head, eyes sagging. "I and sobs to itself. Concern clouds Satcher's person. He points to the coil at my elbow. You am a snail, he tells the sock. Patting my arm, the puppet lifts its head. A snail? I'm a snail. It nuzzles his neck, asks, are you a snail too? Satcher shakes his head. I am a boy. I like you, the sock tells him, and he hugs my arm hard. He's as free from time and being as breeze-blown thistle seed. Grandchildren, I just love it how they can enter imagination and play so thoroughly. This is a little poem that takes place in Rochester, Minnesota. Major Service. You are at Mayo's famous body and spare parts shop, here for an aortic valve and seal job, your old valve worn and leaking, your pump enlarged from working too hard. From their tool bench, your team selects a Sapien 3 valve, guides it along a major duct, seats it with fine precision, and inflates it in place. The team tests for patency, pressure, function, job complete. They park you in progressive care, where I come, spilling gratitude, to collect and drive you home, retooled and roadworthy. My husband is now a retired academic physician, and he travelled to meetings to give presentations and to learn himself, and when I could, I would go along with him. In New Orleans, I would just wander freely while he was working. I saw a large statue that really I found very difficult. New Orleans bronze. Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne de Bienville stands tall, chin tilted, frock coat lifted in a Louisiana breeze, breeches tied above determined calves. He holds a staff and scroll, lands gained with a fresh thumbprint. Behind the honoured founder, a priest in sackcloth robe, heavy rosary hanging from his waist, face impassive, his work done. Seated below them both, a Chickasaw chief, features finely cut, deep-set eyes downcast, his people's peace pipe empty in his hand. So much taken away. It was meant to be triumphal. I did not see it that way. I think lots of us have waited in line at Starbucks. Eclipse at Starbucks. She's slight, the girl in front of me, the line long, barista slow. He works, impassive as a machine. I cannot see her face. From the back, a loose rope of hair, fair, coils over her collarbone, disappears into the bosom of her sweatshirt. The line shuffles forward. Bored barista eyes engage. She orders grande cappuccino. Lashes skim mahogany cheeks as he leans towards her, makes her repeat her order. His shoulders broaden, chest puffs, narrow hips taut. He returns her change, fingers lingering in contact. Leaning across the counter, he points to where her coffee will be, perhaps to catch the scent of her. It's my turn. Small latte, decaffeinated. He takes my order, calls next. Coffee in hand, I look to see the face that so awakened him. She's gone. I glimpsed the moon's unlit curve, missed its shining round. What next? We're fortunate to live in a house with a small woodland, and I'm an early riser, and the kitchen window, sometimes I see remarkable things through it. These woods hold silences. Deep in winter woods, a flick of movement, a fox circling the base of a great maple. It rushes the tree, runs at the trunk and drops back. Again and again. Fox sits alert, nose pointed upwards, tries once more, gives up, and mooches off. Perhaps there's a meal up the tree, trapped between two perils. My tea, too hot to sip. All is still until a grey squirrel scoots down the trunk, dashes over open snow, swoop, wide wings, a red-tailed hawk locks the squirrel in dagger talons. Minutes pass, furred tail twitching, morning tea grows cold. Hawk grips, cold intimacy of death, the double helix of prey and predator, intertwined, each designed for the possibility of the other. Hawk lifts into flight, a banner of grey tail streaming behind. Nature can be hard to watch. I also wrote a poem during the contagion, about 6 weeks in, during the lockdown. In a time of contagion. Long displaced by human growth, kangaroos explore Sydney suburbs, jackals saunter Tehran's broad avenues, and dolphins frolic in Venetian canals. Residents of Beijing, Shanghai, and Delhi marvel at blue skies, unseen for a generation. In polished nights, Venus gleams bright, and airplane-free skies open to the sounds of swans and geese, winging north, redwings and robins, belling peaceful air, the rush of roaring roadways, hushed. In a time of hallowed quiet, our damaged planet breathes. And here we all are, rushing about again. Incubation, and this is a little poem again through the same kitchen window, certainly about a snapping turtle, and maybe it's about writing a poem. Incubation. Through a sunrise window, I see a snapping turtle digging among my petunias, baggy trousered back legs, churning soft dirt, huge carapace, flattening flowers, her need urgent. The cavity, deep enough, she drops in leathery eggs the size of ping-pong balls, pedals her nest closed, and leaves the sun to do its work, nursing the darkness, summer long in dirt's warm womb. Then one October day, a thought, an inkling, an opening in the silence, clawing upwards with penny-sized might, something new and tender climbs into the light. Certainly, little turtles. When Our World Was Whole, the title poem. A friend and I drove out to Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge to see the cranes gathered before migration, sandhill cranes. When our world was whole, we near the refuge as skeins of moonlit mist lift, and we hear the music of 1,000 cranes roosting in the shallows of restored wetlands. Behind us, the sun crests the horizon, feathering white the needles of frost on reeds and grasses. No wind, just the constant calling, as though from distant beginnings in an Eocene dawn when creatures lived in common symmetry before our coming. In a clamour of wild voices, cranes rise into morning on slow wings. It was a lovely moment. One more and then I'm done. Somewhat inadvertently, I became mayor of my city. And I love words, but I'm not so good at numbers, and I had to be responsible for the budget. A city official opens her poetry jotter and finds a formula. The budget is what the city needs to spend. The levy is the money needed to support the budget, minus other fees and income. Property tax is the assessed value multiplied by the class rate. Combine the levy and the property tax and you have the total tax rate. Add a contentious election, chambers packed with restless residents, multiply by regular packets fat with data, divide by keeping husband and house, and you have a poet soul slipping into intractable deficit.
Thank you, Liz. Our last reader tonight is Deborah Keenan. Deborah's the author of 11 collections of poetry and a book on writing called From Tiger to Prayer. Her book, Willow Room, Green Door, New and Selected Poems, received the Minnesota Book Award. Her newest book, The Saint of Everything, came out a few months ago. Recipient of 2 Bush Foundation Fellowships, an NEA Fellowship, among other awards. She is mom of 4, grandmother of 4, and lives by the confluence of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers in beautiful St. Paul. Welcome, Deborah.
Thanks, Marg. You know, I almost always start readings. I read with Matt right after his beautiful book came out. And read Juliet Patterson's beautiful poem and Paula Krzyzewski's beautiful poem, and they both have new books. And then other people have been read at my other readings. So tonight we're starting with Florence Stacy's beautiful new book. Some of you might have heard her. She was on NPR, I think just last week. But
what's her name?
Florence Stacy.
Stacy.
Long time kind of heroine poet in my mind. Worked a lot with Heart of the Beast. And anyway, just wanted to read a poem of hers in honor of her new book, Cradle. Part of me left forever, sitting on the granite boulder, shaped like my country, all around calamity, beauty. At times I rise and let all the trouble of history scatter like seeds in the prairie. When hard rains fall, oaks and cedars still proffer partial shelter. The muted colors of trust and redemption surround a goldfinch, lighting a swaying stalk to sing away its death. Despite everything contrived to kill world spirit, her natural laws, her life, this stone, cradles me, says, come with me, back to the stars. So good for Florence. This book covers about 60 years of her books, which is amazing. And sadly, Mae Swenson is gone, but never forgotten, one of the poetry goddesses. I used to teach her a lot when I was teaching at Hamlin, how to be old. It is easy to be young. Everybody is, at first. It is not easy to be old. It takes time. Youth is given, age is achieved. One must work a magic to mix with time in order to become old. Youth is given. One must put it away like a doll in a closet. Take it out. Play with it only on holidays. One must have many dresses and dress the doll impeccably, but not to show the doll, to keep it hidden. It is necessary to adore the doll, to remember it in the dark on the ordinary days, and every day congratulate one's aging face in the mirror. In time, if fortunate, one will be very old. In time, one's life will be accomplished, and in time, the doll, like new, though ancient, will be found. I did want to say to Marg, I thought you might read a poem by Don, which is why I didn't pick one from his book, but Don gave a beautiful reading here in this beautiful church before he had to go, and it was a great reading because it was so saturated with love, and oh my goodness. Don was a poet I met. I think he was in the very first year of the Loft Mentor series, 1 billion years ago, and I was in the second year, almost a billion years ago. So we met because in the olden days of the Loft Mentor series, you sort of met everyone and you always went out to eat and everybody drank a lot of wine. So. Anyway. I should also say, Lon, I think you're the person who read this book so long before anyone said yes to it, but you said yes to it in a very nice email, so thank you. This is the first poem in the book. I always knew, I said at my publication reading, I always knew what the first poem would be. I always knew what the last poem would be. So I'll read those two for sure. The Thief. He came into our home and found the ball of string I used to tie up tall flowers, climbing beans and peas in the summer. He created an intricate web that crossed through the kitchen into the dining room and ended the web tied to a nail, hammered into the mantel where we hung our son's Christmas stocking. He chose from my bureau slips, bras, panties, cream-colored nylons that had been resting in their old-fashioned box, waiting for the right occasion, and he hung all those things from the string, and the forms made odd shadows in our home. In the basement, he went through all my photos in the darkroom and chose his favorites, I think, and clipped them to the string with my clothespins. One was a picture of our son in a gleaming white t-shirt. In the photo, he was just 2 years old, the same smile that breaks and warms a heart now. He went through my poems and he crossed out the ones he hated with black magic marker. He took our son's second favorite blanket. He took 2 pillows from the couch. He took all the cans of soup. He took the white and brown rice. He took the hammer and the saw. He left a note saying, "I am telling you how to live. Now live that way." This is a poem called Horizon. My neighbor needed a lot of trees to block the horizon line, the prairie too suggestive, reeking of ideas and places he might travel. He planted poplars first because they loved the wind, then cottonwoods for snow in June, then firs and a kind of motionless curve around his property. He still loved the world in just a few ways. So to the south, he left the road up to his place alone. He let the wildflowers fill the ditches. He gave himself a view of whoever might drive or walk towards him. After he had the life he had been told was his, the one he deserved. He hired a small crew to remove the poplars, the cottonwoods, the firs. After their many days of work and the parade of trucks carrying the trees away, the wind could finally get at the house, the man, the shining windows. The horizon was blunt and easy on his eyes, a line drawn in gold, then green, then charcoal. A child might have drawn that line. Another life might have happened here. This is called A Lion in the Dunes. I write a lot about cats. And thanks to Nancy in the back for sending me 4 million pictures of every kind of cat. The lion in the dunes, of course, he is lost. Not a tree, not a pride, not a river, not even an oasis for comfort. He is brave or angry or longing for solitude. He is old or alone or weary of the rules he lives by. He is filthy with sand. Grit in his eyes, the desert wind lifts and shakes his golden mane. He is not aware of being a symbol of anything. No hermetic truths swirl around him. And though he is part of the book of the world, he does not know that. He follows the carved and glowing wall of the dune, and his paw prints make no path to follow as he leads into the wind, always his one true love. This is a very tiny poem. I always tell my students my longing to write very small poems is just laughable, but every once in a while I do it. I was glad Issa made an appearance tonight. This is called, a lot of my poems are called this, Making the Map of the World. Only a few get into my books, but it's a beautiful Thomas Hardy epigraph. It was a windy, whispering, moonless night. To guide himself, he opened under a lamp a map he had brought. The breeze ruffled and fluttered it. But he could see enough to decide on the direction he should take to reach the heart of the place. It's from Jude the Obscure. To understand another's map of the world, our duty, fear, and joy. To walk out into the windy, whispering, moonless night. To carry the lamp without complaint. This is a poem called Animals Above Me. My beautiful neighbors from Laurel Avenue probably will not recognize this neighborhood, but oh. Animals above me. My neighbor cradles a coyote at the top of the hill behind my house. She is screaming at me to stop being so afraid. Then the keening yet ecstatic cry of our neighborhood hawk. Then the plunge, the lift, the rabbit crying. Worst, the nightly dreams of the snake, huge, yellow and green on the high shelving in my old house. Sometimes the bedroom, sometimes the dining room. The dream makes me sick. I wake from it every night between 3:30 and 4. Comforting books do not comfort, so I get up exhausted and I start the day. My neighbors keep telling me, as long as you see it, you don't need to be afraid. And then in the next dream, I cannot see it. I am sick and afraid. I wake up again. The bear is straddling my maple tree about 20 feet up. Is he scared? I'm so sick of thinking about how safe I am. I'm so sick of making animals carry all my fear. The human beings in our country, half at least, live in terror. In our world, half at least. Terrified, desperate, sick with fear. I see it. I cannot see it. I see it. This is a poem, gosh, I think, I don't know where my guess, anyway. This is the poem someone in this room thought was a wonderful poem, so I'm reading it just because he happened to show up tonight. This is for my mom, a good Salt Lake City girl who married for love, screwed up her life, and there you have it. She loved the mountains. She had a lot of vertical energy. She liked the tops of things, crests of waves, teapot lids, the softest hair on a baby's head. She was never afraid on mountain roads, took the curves, wanted to find the old lodges, wanted to see how weather reclaimed the front porches. The old stripped bare timber, always hoped some mountain lion would be waiting in one of the guest rooms. She thought her spirit always ascended. She believed in almost all religions that made good use of the sky. She was kind of holy. She was kind of a sacred person, really, though rarely noticed. She lived a long time, and then didn't participate much in her dying. Indifferent, radiant, gone.
Read it again, please. Do.
Sure. I don't want to feel like Robert Bly, but I'll do that. You know, where I read it is that where I first heard it was that beautiful farmhouse where we used to get to read by the river somewhere far away. Thank you. That's it. Sorry. The day I remember the name of that place will be very special. You all do anyway. Here she loved the mountains, round 2. She had a lot of vertical energy. She liked the tops of things, crests of waves, teapot lids, the softest hair on a baby's head. She was never afraid on mountain roads, took the curves, wanted to find the old lodges, wanted to see how weather reclaimed the front porches. The old stripped bare timber, always hoped some mountain lion would be waiting in one of the guest rooms. She thought her spirit always ascended. She believed in almost all religions that made good use of the sky. She was kind of holy, a kind of sacred person, really, though rarely noticed. She lived a long time, and then she didn't participate much in her dying. Indifferent, radiant, gone. Yeah. Just read a couple more here. I love my... Elizabeth's book was full of those, and then she weaves her way. That's sort of, I guess, what we're doing here. The Saint of Childhood says no to the Dreamland Tree. This book, I said at my publication meeting, I sort of gave up on angels after I wrote my angel book, and I kind of got very obsessed with saints because they all get picked by people, which I think is so strange somehow that people pick them, but whatever. One of my amazing students from a million years ago wrote this long, amazing review of this book, and he counted out the good saints in the book, the neutral saints, and the bad saints. Kind of great. I don't know where this guy felt, but the saint of childhood says no to the dreamland tree. No to the shaking, no to the guarding of sheep, no to the lullaby and good night, no to sweet and low, sweet and low. No to the old mill stream, no. No to the curtains opened or closed, no. To the nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. No to talk of tomorrow. No to four saints at the four corners of the bed, no. To the land of counterpane, no. To the murmur of older voices in the next room, no. To the real linden tree outside the southern window, no, always no. To the dreamland tree. This is a rare moment for me to write about school, but two of my students started a wonderful new magazine called The Under Review, which is sports dedicated and sports adjacent dedicated. It's fantastic. So they asked me to write some stuff for their very first issue, which was great, and I did this one. For some reason in our elementary, I grew up in Bloomington, went to a raggedy little school called, never mind. For some reason in our elementary school, dodgeball was called war. We played the game so happily with such violence, black eyes, sprained fingers and wrists, the ball snapped my head back. My body followed, knocked out against the gym wall. I was so still, my best friend ran crying to the nurse's office. As the game continued, oh, what a gift, this wild, vicious game. All of us little kids in my suburb, and only some of us knew violence at home. The doors closed, but here on the court, in a game called war, we reveled in our primal instincts to hit, to hurt, to survive, to be finally alone, triumphant on the wooden floor. The nurse slapped me back to consciousness. Whatever dream I'd been having was lost forever. And I'll finish with these two. That one's a little too mellow. I don't think I can do that tonight because I seem to be a little edgy. One of the paths you can take in this new book are the paintings of Charles Birchfield, who's one of my sort of obsessive little heroes, big heroes. But trying to think about what you're going to do in 15 minutes. Once you start reading Birchfield poems, then everything else gets kind of strange. So if you own the book, you can just follow that path. Returning at the end of suffering. I'm very struck by how differently you and I write about animals. The deer, the spotted leopard, the sleek sharks, the maroon starfish. Yes, we were surprised. Then the Siberian tigers came through the broken forest, and then two girls. Maybe 8 or 9. We walked toward them, making human assumptions, but they belong to the tigers now, so we let them go. Choose your kingdom, choose your species. New rules at the end of suffering. And I think I'll finish, and I read this poem first. One of Nat's amazing readings for Poetry USA at Hamlin so long ago. It was the first time I ever read it. There's a great, on my website, I just mentioned this only because there's a great essay about this poem written by Cullen Bailey Burns, who's one of our wonderful poets who moved, but we're still going to count her. Of course, because I never think about it. I know my students here are thrilled to hear that. She pointed out that it is a sonnet. Not that I knew. So, anyway, this is the last poem of the book, one of the old songs. The guy walked past singing White Bird in a Golden Cage on a winter's day in the rain. One of the old songs by the group It's a Beautiful Day. Whatever songs the radio assigns me, whatever songs strangers sing as they pass me, those are my songs for the day. This is my creed, my gospel, my way of trying to stay in the world I was born into. I sang the song doing the dishes that night, and it felt right singing White Bird in a Golden Cage on a winter's day in the rain. It was winter. I was white, as I always would be. I understood myself to be in a golden cage, large enough to live a whole life in. I understood it was a beautiful day. I lived the song in my body and mind that whole beautiful day. Thanks, Church Unity. Thanks, Marg.
Thank you, Deborah. Well, that concludes our reading for tonight. Please stick around if you can and mingle with one another and peruse whatever books are up in front. We'd invite you to do that. Also, afterwards, several of us usually go over to Sweeney's, which is a little bar just a few blocks away. It's on Dale, just south of Selby, if that helps orient you. So join us if you can. Let's see. Next month's reading is on February 8th. It's always the second Thursday of the month. February 8th, Paul Mattis is our host, and our readers will be Francine Conley, Christine Mounts, Tom Cassidy, and Mike Hazard. So I hope we see you there. Here, back here, same time. Thank you.